new ideas and teams that address climate-related local challenges. It aims to create a community from change makers and innovators around the world that they are trying to achieve net zero emissions in their local communities. This year, Climathon in Tallinn is taking place in physical format, and I hope we're going like this until the end. It will take place by the end of October, 29th and 30th of October. And you will ask, okay, if it takes a place in that time, what we're gonna do here today? And thank you very much all for being here today. And what is actually the difference between a Climathon and a hackathon, why they have different names? So now what we do actually today is a warm-up for Climathon, to just warm us up, to be prepared to actually create ideas that can change the way that we are living in Tallinn and to achieve zero net emissions here. And we're gonna take some insights from, as I said, from the founders that have already experienced and they are in the success path throughout their startup journey and their green sustainability path. Get some tips and tricks from there. What do you need to be successful in order to participate in the Climathon? What are the struggles that you find there and how they actually survived from that? And even though Estonia is quite small country regarding population and size, is a country that offers a lot of opportunities for experimenting, for piloting, and also see the impact of the solutions that you have decided to solve the problems, the climate problems. And I have three great speakers today: Liisa Palatu from Woola, Kaisa Hansen from Compact, and Valdsalu from Single.Earth, that will share their insights with us. And each participant will have a short presentation, and also you can have some space and time to ask questions about their startup, about their experience, or anything else you would like to ask regarding Climathon. But I talked quite a lot, and before we move to our speakers, as I mentioned, it's a warm-up event, so it's not only me talking, but it's also you, and introduce yourself and learn things from others and who is actually here today. So let's help you interact a little bit with each other and learn who is here today. So I will give you three prompts in the chat, and I will say them as well. Give me 1 second. So we are here. Each one of us is for a different reason here, and a reason that is important for you. So I will split up you in breakout rooms, so you will have 5 minutes to discuss why it is important for you to be here, what you're expecting to take away from today's event, and also what is the main climate problem that you would like to solve. 5 minutes. You will be with some of the other participants that are here. Give me 1 second. And see you in 5. Coming back. Some others were still waiting. Maybe they have much more insightful, much longer conversations. So let's wait some seconds that everyone is back and we can continue. Perfect. So welcome everyone back. I hope you enjoyed it. I see more cameras open, so I think that is a little bit of a comfort side. Can I say some thumbs up or down, or someone wants to share how it was? Perfect. Nice. Thanks. So we can move maybe to our first speaker. It's Liisa Palatu from Woola, but unfortunately she couldn't be with us today live, but my wonderful colleague Kristina Mertova, she has made a pre-recorded interview with Liisa, so I can share it with you, and then if you have questions for her, just post them in the chat and I can talk with Liisa and bring you some answers. Does anybody has heard about Woola? Cool, is this of nods? That's nice. So let me share some introduction and make some introduction about Woola, because we don't have Liisa today with us. So Woola was established by the end of 2018, and Liisa and her team won the EIT Climate KIC Climathon in Tallinn. And not only one in Estonia, but also EIT InnoEnergy crowned Woola the winner of the acceleration program Power Up. But also they won the Climathon Global Awards, Woola from Estonia and 2 other citizen projects from Malaysia. So let's see what Liisa has to share from her experience with Climathon from 2019 with us. Give me a second to share.
Okay, so we are in. So, hello, happy to have you on the warm-up event. And we heard a lot of great stuff about Woola and you, but we would like to know a little bit more. So could you tell me a bit more about Liisa before Woola? What is your background?
So my background before Woola was kind of messy. I didn't really, like, it wasn't the first startup that I started that got successful overnight. That was not the case for me. So I did quite a bit of different things. I studied business, and I tried like founding different startups in quite different segments, mainly related to impact and climate. And did a few other things like management consulting before Woola, but yeah, it was kind of like a like an accidental startup. Yeah.
What was the value of Climathon for your startup?
Yeah, I think like events like Climathon or hackathons in general are a really good source of inspiration, because you see a lot of like enthusiastic people with like full of great ideas working all together in the same place, and you get a lot of like instant feedback from mentors, which also can be quite energizing. So that was like the really good part about participating in an event like Climathon. But yeah, after the hack and after winning the hack, that's when you actually have to get to work. So you need to start talking to customers and start building your product and trying to sell your product. So this is where you can like kind of use the energy that you get from events like Climathon and to put it into use, because what follows is like a very like a realistic day-to-day life in a startup, which is not glamorous usually, and it's not very exciting. So yeah, that's a good application for the energy you get from Climathon.
Awesome. What was your participation journey at the Climathon? Like when you were at the event, how was it for you?
Like as well as I remember, I think we got the idea like 3 days before Climathon. So I sent a message to you guys asking if I can still participate, because I think the deadlines were already done for the time, but I was able to participate. And yeah, so the first part in a hackathon is presenting your idea and finding a team, which, you know, I've been to quite a few hackathons, and that has been probably the most difficult part, because you need to compete with a lot of ideas, and you need to like be enthusiastic enough for people to join you without being creepy, you know. So at first we didn't get a lot of people who wanted to join the team, so I had to like be very proactive myself and just had to ask around a lot for getting the team together, because we really wanted to work on this idea, and that worked. So our focus for the hackathon was to actually build a prototype. So we were very focused on execution, so we started doing that. We had some wool, and we started felting like this type of prototype, like a first packaging version with a safety pin right in the location. So we did get a first prototype ready in the end of the hack. And yeah, like we started doing the mentor rounds where we would get feedback from mentors. And I remember that the first rounds that we did, the feedback was actually like disastrous. We got a lot of criticism because the idea was quite crazy. And I think some of the mentors might have thought that I was joking or something. So the first feedback, yeah, was really bad. We just started working on it like step by step. And it was actually like even kind of motivating. to hear all of this criticism, because they were like, you know, action points that we could actually work on. And yeah, like at one point we were just like done with the prototype, and the last thing that we had to do was the presentation. And at that point I was very tired already, so I remember I kind of invented this new drink. So I took black coffee and I mixed it with green tea, so that was quite energizing, to say the least. Yeah, and we were about to do the final presentation, but we still didn't have a name for the idea. So I think I wrote like 4 names down on a napkin, and one of them was Woola, and that sounded like the best, most reasonable option. So we took that and then did the presentation. And yeah, after the presentation, that's when we met Clean Tech First and Erki, who yeah, became like a huge help to us. So shout out to Erki. And yeah, then we won the hack, and I was very surprised, maybe because I was just like also very tired at that point and nothing really made sense anymore. But yeah, like in essence, that was our journey.
Oh yes, it can be very, very exhausting and very empowering as well at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Knowing what you know now, is there anything which you would done differently during the hackathon, the Climathon?
Yeah, I think like a good tip is that if it's possible, you should come prepared. Because it would be like a really good idea to focus on execution during this event, because it's very intense and you need to sort of stay awake and stay productive at the same time. So, you know, like you have to do market research. It's really necessary. So if you can do that beforehand, if you can do that at home, it would be much better to come to the hack prepared and to know like whether there are competitors in your segment, or what is the like, yeah, what is the strategy that you need to take. Because yeah, starting to do market research at like 2 a.m. when you're already super tired might not be the best idea. So you can just like use this time for execution.
Yeah, it's 24 hours. You need to be very wise with that time. True.
Yeah, it goes by fast.
And now let's move on to the present. You have your startup company. What have you enjoyed the most about starting your company?
I think this is something that has kind of taken a while for me to understand, but the process of it, like the process of building the company, is actually what it's all about. So I have really enjoyed like the craziest experiences that I've had connected to Woola. Like I've gotten to situations where I would have never thought I'd get into, and like there have been a lot of crazy experiences. Like for instance, you know, one morning you wake up and in the middle of the day you realize that you need to get a rental van, fill it up with wool and drive it to Lithuania and back within like 30 hours. So this is something like, these kinds of experiences are something that I really love. So yeah, like if you're the kind of person who really likes stability and a lot of money, then probably starting a company isn't for you at this early stage. But if you really value like crazy experiences and the journey of it, then it's a really good experience.
So basically every day is a new challenge.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like challenges even.
Sure. And what keeps you staying motivated? Because there must have been a lot of hardship, and probably there is a lot ahead of you. How do you overcome them? How do you stay focused?
Like the whole reason that we started Woola was because the team and I, we were working on an e-commerce startup ourselves, where we were shipping out parcels, and we saw the packaging problem. And we saw that there's no alternative to bubble wrap that is not based on fossil fuels and that doesn't promote single-use culture. So like we saw that the problem is huge, since there are like 55 billion parcels shipped in bubble wrap every year. And like knowing what we know now that we've, you know, run the company for like a year and a half, we know that it's really difficult to create new materials and to create new packaging, especially if you're in the field of production, which is like it's really underfunded as well. So it's really hard to replace plastic. So we know that there are very small chances that anyone else besides us will actually do it. And that's why we're doing it, right? Because we need to get rid of plastic like in packaging in order to keep temperature increases below a reasonable level. So that's why we do it.
That's awesome. What is your vision for Sustainable Estonia 2030?
I think there's a lot that needs to be done, but probably the most important thing, or the starting point, is the change in the mindset of like how us as Estonians and as a country, how we see climate change. Because I think at this point, most people have acknowledged it and they have like understood that climate change is real, but we're still in like massive denial about how it affects us. Because you hear like, and you see like in actions as well, how people don't really react to like climate threats, because they think that, you know, we live in Estonia, nothing is going to happen to us, we don't have earthquakes, things like that. And I think this is a really like dangerous way of thinking, and we need a lot more collective thinking to actually fix it. And yeah, like if we're talking about concrete examples, and two of the sectors that I think need like a huge revolution, one is transportation. A lot of work needs to be done here. Probably I don't need to talk much about it because everyone already knows how big of a problem it is, and especially in terms of like biking. Yes. And I think one of the solutions there is isn't even that related to the infrastructure, but like the mindset of people and how we as a country, we need to stop hating bikes. And the second thing that I think needs to, I think like a lot more responsibility needs to be taken by solutions that make our life really comfortable, but they do it by adding to climate change. Like for instance, food delivery in single-use boxes. I think we need to have an awakening there and start putting responsibility on you know, solutions like this, because it's like, I think we're kind of past the point where we only need to, where we only can look at comfortable solutions and not think about the kind of consequences that they have on the climate.
Awesome, thank you very much. Is there some last words you would like to say to the future attendees of Climathon?
Yeah, I guess like I said, like the main parts of my experience already, but like a good tip would be just to have fun at the hackathon, because if you look back at it in 2 years or in 10 years, it's a really crazy thing to do. And in the moment while you're there, you might feel like crap because you're really tired and nothing is working out. But in hindsight, it's a really cool experience to have. So just like think of it as, you know, it's just 24 hours, and after that you can sleep as much as you want.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was very awesome to chat with you, and
Sure.
A lot of luck. Big shout out, and I see you.
Thank you.
I don't know how you feel after that video. What I feel is like it's time to change the world and just start with my own startup and start being creative and motivated, and don't sleep for 24 hours and just hack solutions for climate. I would like to thank again Liisa for this interview, and also Christina for doing all the questions, preparing the question, and actually doing the interview. I could stay in the words of Liisa for a long time and just bring a lot of comments. What I would bring at this point is mostly to just have fun and have the passion that she had, and experience the positive experience that she had, and how nice she was describing and feeling, you know, this adrenaline of having the van and rented to go to Lithuania and do things, and all this startup way of thinking and living. And I think we can continue in our second speaker, or maybe the first speaker live here, Kaisa Hansen, who has big experience regarding startups, and that's how I met her as well, through a hackathon the first time. So welcome, Kaisa, and thank you very much for being here and representing your own example, your own path through Climate KIC participation compact. As I said about startups and hackathons, Kaisa is the head of Taltech Startup Center, and she's been active, I think, more than 5 years in the startup sector. So I think she has quite many good and useful tips and tricks and experience to share with us. So Kaisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katarina. Thanks for inviting me. I'm always happy to share my experience and talk about the programs that I have been through and where I have found help and so on. By the way, I remembered some fun facts when I heard Anna-Liisa's story. So the first one is that actually I was a mentor at the Climathon where Anna-Liisa won. And I met her also during a hackathon that I organized at Mektori. So this was a hackathon of circular economy. And I was already then sure that Anna-Liisa is going to have some great ideas and she will be a success. So very, very happy to see Anna-Liisa succeeding. But I am now going to share my screen and talk about my own startups. 1 second. Now you should see my screen, right? Okay, hopefully you will see it. And yes, before I start, actually, I would also, as I was already bringing in fun facts, then I also have some fun facts about Merit that is going to be the speaker after me. So I also met Merit during one startup competition or a program called the Ajujaht. And this was a few years ago, and then she had a different idea. And it has been great to see how we all develop and what are we coming up next. So it's great to see her here as well. But a bit about what I am doing and about my background is that at the moment I'm working as a startup center manager at Taltech Innovation and Business Center, and I have founded 2 startups that I'm going to tell you about. And I also founded Circular Economy Estonia, which is an NGO, and its goal is to help companies innovate their business models, taking into account the circular economy practices. So here is Mektori. Maybe some of you have visited us. I will quickly say what I am doing there. So the main goal is to help students and scientists form their own startups. We have the pre-incubation program Starter Tallinn. We are also organizing different startup competitions and hackathons and so on. And of course, we are involved in international cooperation projects as well. And I think you are the first ones to hear it, is that we are launching a Taltech spin-off program this October. So this is the very first program aimed at deep tech startups, and especially if you have a university background. But now let's talk about my startups. I will also talk a bit about my first startup, Tricular, because this is where I got started with my startup journey, and of course, Clean Tech Estonia has played a big role there as well. A bit about my own personal background as well, and how I have developed over time. Some important milestones for me is that I have actually volunteered actively since university time, I would say, and this has given me great experiences, and this is what I recommend others to do as well, because, for example, organizing big conferences and events and so on, this is everything that I got from there, and also my first public speaking experiences or organizing any events or even moderating something. So this is something that has helped me a lot. And in total, I have taken part in over 20 training courses abroad and also here in Estonia. And this means that I am very interested in self-development, and I believe in lifelong learning. I think that this is something that a founder should also have, always be curious and willing to learn some more. And in total, I don't know if I counted right, but I have passed over 9 development programs. This is then with my startups, and some programs I have passed twice because I have 2 startups. So, and in total, I've been active in sustainable business for 10 years already, and my special interest is circular economy. But actually, where it all got started, that I remembered today, and that is also related to Climate KIC, which is also organized, or who is like the host of the Climathon concept in general, was the Climate KIC summer school. And I was studying in Germany at that time, and I had always been interested in sustainable business and environment and so on. And then that is when I found out about this summer school. So it was quite accidental, but I decided to take part, and it was a great experience. It was a program that Climate KIC organizes, and I know that Cleantech Estonia is also organizing it on the Estonian side. But when I took part, then there wasn't an organizer in Estonia yet. And before I studied economics in Tartu University, but I was always wondering that there has to be an alternative to maximizing your profit and minimizing costs mindset. So this is why I decided to go and study in Germany as well. And I think this summer school was like this stepping stone for me when I decided that, okay, enough of standing in the back row and only listening and taking part in these courses, that now it's time to actually take action and do something on my own. But of course, then I didn't have a concrete idea yet. I was just open, and I didn't actually have any idea what I will be doing when I come back to Estonia. So when I came back to Estonia, then I saw that there was a hackathon coming up, and its topic was circular economy and eco-innovation. And I was very positively surprised because I hadn't heard that Estonia was very active in that field during those times. But I thought that, okay, I had never taken part in any hackathons, but I decided to go and see what is it. And to my surprise, we actually managed to win this hackathon, and we got 2 special prizes as well. So we got a direct access to Ajujaht or Brain Hunt top 30, and also to Prototron top 40. So these are the programs that I also definitely recommend if you happen to do well in the Climathon as well. So this brings us to my first startup, which name is Treecular, and this was actually a deep tech or clean tech startup, and it was also involved with material science. So now when I reflect back, then I understand that it's quite hard to be successful in this deep tech area, because especially then this topic was not so popular among investors as well. And I remember that I also got some comments when I spoke to investors that, oh, we don't invest in deep tech because it's by other people taking part, or then you might get, if there are some inspirational speakers, then you might get some ideas from there as well. And some key takeaways regarding my journey. Of course, it's a lot of learning and self-development, and this is like the most valuable experience that you can get from anywhere, I would say. And I would say that actually the team is the most important part of your startup. So of course, in the beginning, you don't have to have like a full stack team. It's enough if you have a great idea, and then from the hackathon, you will find your team members, and they might change in the future as well. But in the beginning, it's important to have at least one person who believes in your idea and who is willing to work together with you. So if you already are 2 people, then you are already a team. But as I mentioned, then hackathons are the place meant to find team members as well. And the second takeaway I would emphasize is that you have to have grit and resilience, because there are always people who don't understand or don't believe in your idea. But the main thing is that you should be like very confident and work, be ready to work a lot. So this is something that you definitely have to have. And as I mentioned, that it's a great way to grow in general as a person, because you have to step out of your comfort zone a lot. And I believe that this is the only way to grow. Actually, you usually don't advance or grow if you just stay in your comfort zone. So good opportunity to actually overcome your fears and get better. And of course, you have to take into account that as a founder, you sometimes have to do everything. So you have to have those multidisciplinary skills. You have to know how to do marketing, how to pitch, how to. You also have to understand the technical side. So yes, you really have to. You have to be very versatile and adapt quickly to changes. And if I would give you like one recommendation for the Climathon, then it would be the quote from Albert Einstein. So before tackling or before you try to solve any problems, you really have to get to the root of it. So usually people jump to throwing out solutions, but most important part is to actually understand the problem that you're trying to solve. So this is the quote that I would leave you with when you go to your Climathon. And also one book recommendation is from Gunter Pauli, who is also called the Steve Jobs of sustainability, and he has a book called The Blue Economy. And this is actually a great book also when you are in search of business ideas, because he has here examples of over 200 projects that he has done. For example, growing mushrooms and making like crazy things out of them. So he is a true inspiration. And also, I think that he's a very good public speaker. So if you want to get some tips on public speaking, then Gunter Pauli is quite an interesting person to watch. But this is all from my side. And if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaisa, for the wonderful presentation. And sorry for having this recording has started during the meeting, but the time that you were talking, but something unexpected happened. So Facebook has crashed down, so it stopped streaming there, so I had to find a solution, so I started recording. That's why that happened. If you have any questions, either post them in the chat or raise your hand, the most courageous ones, and post your question there. And from the whole journey, I could say that you have been through, what I see is that when you come somehow involved with the Climate KIC programs, either as a summer school or the Climathon, you still stay in the loop, you're still exploring the community. As you said, like explore the network, find new opportunities, and the one thing leads to the other, and you stop never experimenting. It's not about only the skills that you get and the network that you get, but also and to develop your skills, but it's also to develop as a person, because you create the idea sometimes and it's your baby, you don't want to leave it, you want to stay like this. But all this journey, I guess, challenge you so much about yourself and about your ideas, the way you think and work, which is incredible. I will just wait 1 to 2 minutes more if someone wants to add something or ask Kaisa any question about her journey. But first of all, I would like to ask you how you see the future in Tallinn. What are the main challenges that we need to address in the next decade?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are many challenges that we have to tackle. For example, the whole concept of a smart city. So in many cities, actually, they have already implemented the 15-minute city concept. So this means that the city has to be built in a way that you can get to the most necessary places in 15 minutes and on foot. So this is something that I hope Tallinn is also trying to implement. And of course, the whole concept of circular economy and zero waste. So I hope that many advancements will be made in those areas as well.
Thank you very much. I wish that this Climathon, I mean, this year we'll let it a little bit more broad, so people can come with their own ideas that can help Tallinn reach zero net emissions, regardless of which topic or which sector it is. But I think that the mobility and the circular economy are again on the top to find solutions. And what Liisa mentioned before is to change the mindset. It's not sometimes that we need the infrastructure, but to believe that we can do it and can actually do it. So far, I don't see any brave ones raising hands or any questions in the chat. But of course, I guess if something comes up later on, feel free to post it. So we can move on, I guess, to Merit. Thank you very much, Kaisa. Oh no, we have a question. Yes. We still have some time, so Merit, let's be a little bit, let's have a little bit more time for Kaisa to answer that, and I can read also the question. So your journey is amazing. What do you think about doing startup full-time versus doing it part-time while studying or working or doing another job? Any advice on time management?
Yeah, this is definitely a tricky part, but I would definitely say that even if you're studying or if you're working, then you always have an opportunity to start, and you can see how it goes, and then you can always decide then where do you want to put your focus. So for example, if I was in IUF, then most people who took part were working even full-time. So and when they saw that the startup is actually advancing and it has a lot of potential, then they decided to focus on it full-time. So there are no boundaries, just start whenever you feel like it. Doesn't matter if you're studying or working. But in the end, yes, you should choose one or the other. So if you really want to get going.
Great, thank you very much. I think time management for startups is quite a big deal. And sometimes you need to see your needs, how your startup is going, how are your skills, and how competent you are and safe to say, okay, I quit everything and I'm doing only that. I think it needs a little bit of courage and to ensure some other things, or just participate in climathons, hackathons, or other development, idea development programs that can support you either financially sometimes. Thank you very much once more for being here and sharing all these great insights. And we'll move to Merit now. Merit is the representative of Single.Earth. And I think I have some difficulties actually to share or to explain what it is, but I will try because I find it quite strange, but in a good way, like unusual. That's the right way, unusual. So Single.Earth is a marketplace connecting forests and wetlands to buyers, but it's not cutting down trees or starting farms. It actually monetizing nature by selling carbon offsets with an online platform that tokenizes lands, forests, swamps, wetlands, and wildlife in order to save them. I find quite interesting and something that is not so usual. And as we have heard so far, we don't hear the everyday people, the people that like stability, the people that don't want to try new things, but we find innovators. So Merit, the floor is yours, and I'm looking forward to hear your story as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here, and very excited to share our story. So I will put up a few slides as well. So the slides are about what we do, but I will try to keep it as relevant as possible to you, so that I will try to tell you the story of how we came where we are. So first of all, Single.Earth is indeed a startup. We're tokenizing the world's nature. So the big goal that we have taken ourselves is making nature the investment of the future, or making nature the new gold. And the story actually started with a hackathon. So it was 2 years ago. By the way, exactly 2 years ago, on the 4th of October in 2019. I went to a hackathon and basically started figuring out, like, what can we do about the very intensive forestry that is happening here in Estonia. So it was a very local problem that me and the team wanted to solve. So we see a lot of forests being clear cut. So we wanted to find a very systematic solution to that. So not just, stand out for one particular forest or scream and shout when something is cut down, but try to dig into the actual underlying problems. Why do we have such an intensive land use happening? And of course, we realized that it's not just Estonia, and it is not just forests. It's actually all kinds of land use all over the world. And it has been quite a process. So in these 2 years, we've actually developed this idea from a very basic idea of that we came up during a 48-hour hackathon. That was basically that if we have forests and if we have companies that want to compensate for the footprint, why don't we just connect those two? And I think, like, on its own, it's already quite a nice idea. In the sense that there is money on the carbon markets, and as forests sequester carbon, wetlands are huge carbon stocks, then they can basically be monetized as such. So the big problem that we realized is that although we do have carbon offset projects like that, most landowners are still not using these business models. So we realized that financially, it still doesn't make sense for landowners to do anything else but sell their natural resources as raw material. So we see that nature is still mostly monetized as raw material, so timber in forests or peat in wetlands, for example. But the first bottleneck that we realized was the fact that landowners don't have access to this market. And that was kind of like the starting point for us. So why don't they do that? And we realized that the reason lies in the fact that there's so much manual work to get to the market. So if you own a forest and you want to go start selling carbon offset from your land, you have to go through these very long and manual procedures to do that. So you have to get a carbon certificate, and this can take you months and cost you thousands of euros. So that means that most landowners will never do that. And that was kind of like the first problem that we knew that it can be solved and it can already improve the situation a lot. What we didn't know is that to actually come to a point where we have like this everything figured out, then this is not something you achieve in like 48 hours, and it's not something you achieve with a week or even a month. It has taken us 2 full years to actually understand like what is it that we want to achieve and what are the different paradigm shifts that we need to create. So I think that lesson number 1 for me was that like these good ideas don't come overnight. So it's not like you wake up one day and you know what you have to do. It's actually a very long process. So for us, where we have come today is that we understood that it's actually not going to be one particular app or a website that is going to, or web application that is going to solve one big problem. It rarely is, because the problems when we speak about climate change, biodiversity loss, these are huge problems, and it is very unlikely that one particular app is going to solve that. So I think if you're looking at very big problems, you kind of have to look at the very big paradigm shifts that you need to create. Of course, you can use technical solutions to create these paradigm shifts, but you kind of have to start thinking in very big categories to understand what's actually happening. So the number 1 thing that we realized is that if nature doesn't have any financially feasible business models for conservation and protection, then it's actually not integrated into the economy as a whole. So the only way nature becomes a part of the economy is when somebody wants to cut it down or destroy it. Until it's just there and nobody wants to do anything with that, then nature doesn't have a monetary value. And that's actually a huge problem. It's like philosophically like bothering me, but it's also like in very practical terms also bad, because if we don't have financial value in something, then unfortunately people aren't very good at valuing it at all. So the first step that if we want to save the natural world that we need to take is we need to make nature the new gold. So gold is also a raw material. Nature is also currently treated as raw material. Then why have we figured out, or how have we figured out how to attach more value to gold, and why can't we do the same with nature? So by making nature the new gold, we need to make it tradable, liquid, and assign everything that gold has, these parameters, to nature as well. And step 2 is understanding if we can do that, if we can turn nature into a liquid asset class without taking it out from where it is, then how much of that do we have on this planet? So building a digital twin of the world's nature and kind of tokenizing it based on that. And then the third step is democratizing nature conservation. So the first problem that we started from still exists. So we still need to figure out like how can we make this market accessible to all landowners. So, but as you can see, the problem that we started from is actually now the last problem that we're solving, because before we get into solving that problem, there are like 2 big paradigm shifts that we need to solve before that. I will very quickly go through this because I don't want to bother you with these details, but I think like something to highlight here is definitely the team. So this is actually the team that we had like 3 months ago. We were back then, I think we were a team of about 9 or 10 people. Today we're a team of 28 people. And we will be a team of 60 people by the end of the year. So, so we are growing very fast, and this is only thanks to the fact that we have had 2 successful fundraising rounds. So we raised a pre-seed round last year and a seed round from Equity Ventures this year. And both of these occasions have been like very like huge milestones for us, because this has kind of like leveled us up, and kind of like we have been feeling like once we started from being a team in a hackathon, we've actually evolved into a proper company through that. So I think like the one thing to highlight or maybe to think about is that the team you kind of start working at any hackathons or any events, and when you start building your startup, it's like very important to choose the people wisely, because it's going to be a very long journey. So anything that you feel on day one is strange and you have some doubts, then probably these are going to just, you know, become bigger and bigger, and it's never going to work out. So Single.Earth has two co-founders. So me, and I'm also the CEO, and Andrus, who is the CTO. Two very different people, and we somehow complement each other, like in the areas that the other one lacks in. And I think this is actually one of the greatest assets that we have, kind of like not picking a team based on trying to find people like you, but actually finding people that lack the skills or the attitudes or the characteristics that that you don't have. So kind of like how can you complement each other? So yeah, like having a team of two as the co-founders has helped us a lot. So we've been quite agile in making our decisions and coming up with the strategies on how to evolve this company. Then when involving the investors, I think looking for the same match is definitely as important as it is when looking for your co-founders, because they are going to be your extended team. So for us, it has worked out like really nicely. So the first investors from Icebreaker have actually been like very strategic advisors to us, and they kind of helped us to the next fundraising round as well. So I think these are the main highlights for me. Like when you go out on your startup journey, it's going to be a long process. Even before you actually come out to the market, it can take years. So choose the people you want to do that with, and this can actually be quite fun. So yeah, so that's about the team. And then we basically started tackling these topics one by one. So how do we make nature the new gold? And then we literally compared what does gold have that nature doesn't. And this is how we understood that this is actually like a big financial topic. It's not just about tackling climate change or biodiversity loss. It's actually creating like this new financial reality where nature has value. So turning nature into a liquid asset class. And yes, technically, we tokenize the world's nature. So every time 100 kilograms of CO2 is captured in biodiverse nature, we emit 1 token to the landowner. And this can be bought, as the first story was, by companies that want to compensate for the footprint. But although we were like very, like this was the business model that we started off with, we actually realized that there's another layer that can be added to the story, and that can actually become our primary story, or the first focus is having like the investors layer in between there to basically increase the demand and be able to start making the impact sooner. So I think like being flexible, like understanding and kind of like learning throughout the journey and making like these tiny pivots is something that has helped us a lot during this all this process. And then we're also building a digital twin of the world's nature, and using satellite data to basically understand how nature works, how it sequesters carbon, and every time it does so, based on satellite data and big data and machine learning, then we emit those tokens. And then the step 3 that I mentioned, that we have to make sure that these markets are actually accessible to all landowners. Because today the manual certification is making the procedure so complicated that most landowners never end up in the market at all. So we automate these processes by having this digital twin, so that landowners can easily come in, find the land lot, verify the ownership, and start trading. And I think like a very good thing to think about when coming up your idea, but also the story that you tell, is thinking about the question, why now? Like, why is today the best time to pitch the story that you're pitching or build the team that you're building? Like, why is it so necessary to do it now? And I think this is like the critical question. If you talk to your new hires, if you talk to investors, if you talk to the media, this is like always the main question, why now? So for us, we've looked at different trends that we see in the world. So the economy is being transformed towards natural capital. We see big investment institutions buying land and making natural capital investments. Then on the other hand, we see that the world is looking for ways how to connect nature into the economy. The United Nations is making theoretical attempts towards that. And then we see that the crypto markets are booming. So a lot of money is being exchanged there. So maybe we can use part of that to make an actual impact in the real world. And of course, the countries are struggling to meet climate and biodiversity goals. So one of the reasons for that could be that they have never actually engaged the actual landowners who have the power to make the impact that they're looking for. So we see ourselves as the first practical implementation of the paradigm shift to connecting like these puzzle pieces together and make the economy support the protection of nature. And of course, we need to do it now because we still have nature around us to save. So and now before, like, this is the end of the official part, and now I will also share like where did the Climate KIC play a part in what we do. So right after we had basically won the hackathon that we started from, we were like a team of, I can actually stop sharing and just tell you the story. So we were then a team of, I think, like 8 people. So throughout the next months, we lost a few members, and kind of like the original members have faded away. So we still have me and my co-founder who kind of got together for the hackathon. We have, and we have 2 more members who still were there in the first hackathon. So basically half of them didn't continue with us later on. So, but Climate KIC was one of the accelerators that basically enabled us to continue working on the projects that we started working on. So if Kaisa in the previous chat shared how she has done startups part-time, full-time, so there are different ways how to do that. So we decided to pick the full-time part, which meant that we were constantly throughout the first year, we were constantly looking for different programs that would basically help us survive the first year. So having the first accelerator, which was the Beamline Beta Accelerator by Cleantech Estonia, was basically the first step towards survival for us. Like if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have been able to make the switch to basically full-time commitment. Although, yes, of course, we weren't able to pay us like huge amounts of money, but it was enough to survive, and it was enough to take this very raw hackathon idea and start actually figuring out like what are the business opportunities around that. So I think that was like the first, you know, very big milestone for us. Like without that, we wouldn't be here where we are today. The second part was the Climate KIC accelerator that again helped us like financially to survive. So that's also a crucial part. So even though there's a lot of reporting and everything to do there, then eventually like without the money, it wouldn't have been the same for us. So the money is unfortunately always a big part of survival, but also I think like that was like a very systematic way of how to approach this problem for a very from a more frameworked way. So I think this was the first time when we actually started trying out different methodologies on how to tackle the process. So for example, I remember we had a workshop about the hypotheses and how we should be able to test different things that we want to do on the market with different hypotheses and how to validate them. And that kind of was one of the things that we learned from the Climate KIC workshops. So I think it was a useful way how to develop our product after that. And although we didn't actually end up in the market after that, we were a lot more confident about what we do. And I think some of the pivotal moments for us have always been where we kind of get stuck with something. So, you know, if you don't enter the market, you start chasing your tail and you ask yourself the same question and you always answer them in the same way. And you kind of feel like you're not getting somewhere. You don't get any new information anywhere. So I think this is the time where like talking to mentors, talking to other teams in any program, in any event is always something that can help you. So even if they don't have any particular advice to give you, they sometimes ask you the most naive questions that will help you along and kind of push you to continue that in some way. So definitely there have been some uncomfortable realizations where you realize that you don't have answer to somebody's question, but that kind of helps you progress with the idea further. So I would definitely not do startups in a silo. So kind of like trying to get something ready and then come out with a boom, because it rarely happens like that. It takes a lot of time, a lot of like people to actually make this a proper idea and understand all the different aspects of that. So yeah, I think like the main thing is that, like, would I have done anything differently? Probably no. I'm super happy that we had the luck and the that the stars aligned for us, so that we were able to enter from one event to, like, from the hackathon to the different accelerators. And basically after we had passed 3 accelerators, we had survived. That was also the moment when we also fundraised for our first time, and we kind of like didn't have to starve at all during the story. So I think we kind of like got lucky to that, but it was also like looking back, it sounds like all fun and games, but it was also very much hard work, dedication, and also making the decision to go full time. I think that the decision to go full time like came easy to us, because once we realized the opportunity that we have with this, like if this startup were to succeed, then we would be able to make a huge impact. And like once you set on the journey to save the world, there's like no way you can stop. Like, when is the time when you say that this is too difficult, I give up? Like, you can't do that. So you just continue pushing through. And I think like persistence is definitely something that you have to have if you go on the startup journey. So I think like I don't know, talking to journalists, like trying to like spending 1.5 months trying to get any attention from anybody, and then finally coming to that is like it's purely done on like this brutal persistence force that you just won't stop before you've actually achieved what you want to achieve. So yeah, I think this is my experience here. So I hope it maybe helped somebody.
That is great, Berit. Thank you very much. Now I think I understand much better what Single.Earth does. And as I said, it's an unusual way of thinking. And I guess is that what we talk about, innovation and pioneering and never give up. I think 3 of you mainly paraphrase the same thing: either don't give up, either be persistent, because you have a vision and you have this feeling that if I don't do it now that I have already kicked off, then who will do it? I cannot leave that being there. So you just need to take the step and continue. If you have questions, please post them in the chat. And I will ask you also the same question about how do you see the future in Estonia regarding the next decade, with the challenges that are existing, and where will be, let's say, your prediction of advancement?
I think my predictions in the next 10 years is that I think like all people have to take more responsibility about what's happening. So I do have hope that governments and businesses and everybody will also tap into that. But I think we're still missing the force of the people. I think especially if you look at it from the city's perspective, then cities, although we kind of think that we are like an isolated part, then most of the intensive land use that is happening everywhere across the country is actually caused by the companies that are located in cities and the consumers that are all in the cities. So I think a lot of that we have to start taking responsibility for everything that we consume, and understand that everything that is happening in nature or with nature is kind of mostly done by people in the cities. So not just looking at cities as payways and transportation, but kind of like the people, like we are the consumers, like most of the consumers are based in cities. So kind of looking that as a whole. So if the cities like take a very ambitious goal of becoming climate neutral, then actually becoming climate neutral and looking at the wider impact as well that we as consumers have on other parts of the world. So for example, if we eat the chocolate, then do we know where the cocoa beans come from, and what went into that to get that cocoa bean? Maybe there was a rainforest there before the cocoa bean plants were planted there. So kind of, I think there's like a lot of transparency and a lot of like communication missing between cities and the entire world. So cities are not an isolated part of the world. They're actually one of the drivers of everything that's happening on this planet.
Thank you. I think that's what you mentioned is important to understand what is the whole journey, and the fact that it doesn't pollute here where I am when I consume something doesn't mean that doesn't have an effect in another place. And I guess we see the last years in Estonia regarding the climate, how things are changing. And now we're like, why doesn't it snow the winters anymore? Why we don't have any more very cold and heavy winters, and why we have so warm summers? And I would like to say something that you said during the presentation now again, to change the mindset of how we see the things. I was in a presentation training yesterday, and they had an example about a castle somewhere in England, that it was around a preservation natural area, and they had to do a cycling road. So they put the question in the public, so should we just destroy the forest and go around the castle, or just demolish the castle in order to have the road passing from there? And most of the people were like, we preserve the castle and we destroy the nature, because we have in mind that always nature will provide us with resources. But actually, if we see the age of the planet and for how long the forest existed there, and how long a castle was actually existing, what is more difficult to build and restore is actually the nature.
Yep.
And you remind me that part. We have some questions as well in the chat, so quite many. Yes, interactive people, I like it. So let's start with Withy. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. So your journey is amazing. What do you think about doing startup? Oh no, sorry, I'm sorry. Mini. Thank you, Merit. How is the employment in clean tech startups? Are the teams rather small, or could there be scaling in teams as well?
I think that the startup teams are going to look pretty much like the clean tech startups are starting to look pretty much as, I don't know, fintech startups are today, because this is the main thing that everybody will have to focus on. So I would say that we will see huge companies focusing on clean tech. And I think that this space basically has to come to the same level that everybody else is, because like if we have so much human power focusing on, I don't know, destroying nature, then we need at least as much to prevent that. So I think hiring and employment in the clean tech startups is increasing. I hope that is, like, especially looking at how the investment money is going into this sector more and more, and a huge part of that goes into hiring new people. And especially like when I know that, like, I've heard from actual investors saying that there aren't enough clean tech startups to invest in. So they are looking for startups to invest in so that they could fuel their growth and increase the employment in this sector. So I'm seeing more of that. Maybe I also have a very subjective perspective on that, because we are hiring a lot. So, but I see other companies do the same. So I would say that this is the sector that is going to be hiring more and more during the coming years.
Cool, thank you very much. And we have some very nice compliments about your story, and that is a paradigm shift the world needs, actually. And from Coyote, there are some questions. So I will read them all through, and there are quite many, so feel free to choose how you want to structure your answer. So did you work with some research units at universities for the development of your tech? How do you measure the precision and accuracy of the simulation of the health model? How do you verify land ownership? And is it easy to get companies compensate for their CO2 emissions?
Very good questions. So did we work with some research units at universities to, we tried working with some particular universities, but then I think we faced something that we've heard a lot about from like legends, so that it's very difficult to actually cooperate with universities. because I think we don't have very clear knowledge transfer systems between the startups and the universities. So universities have their own funding schemes and they are not directly connected to handing out IP to or any information to the startup. So I think there's a huge gap in there. So a lot of this research that they do is actually doesn't end up pretty much anywhere. So I think this is something that I've heard a lot when we're actually building our in-house research team. So the scientists we've been talking to who are interested in joining us always say that they have been looking for a practical implementation of what they have been writing and researching about. But they've always felt that they do this huge research and it gets published and everybody kind of like talks about it and then nothing happens. So our goal is to be the place where things start happening after you've actually done some research. So I think it kind of, there are probably ways how to collaborate with universities, but I have to admit that our experience wasn't that easy. So kind of we decided to go the route that we're hiring our own in-house scientists to work on this topic. And then start collaborating with universities through them and their networks. So I think there's a lot of improvements that can be done in this space. So and I actually hear that the universities are looking for ways how to transfer knowledge into the private sector and kind of are looking for ways how to collaborate on that. But I think there's some legal and technical details still missing. So we don't have a very scalable solution for that. So how do we measure the precision and accuracy of what we do? So everything that we do is basically we benchmark based on the satellite data that we have. So unfortunately, we can't measure carbon sequestration or biodiversity directly from satellites. What we can do is take this as a baseline model and then basically apply our carbon and biodiversity models on top of that, come up with some numbers, and then the best way how to do that is to go on ground and try to compare that with some samples we've taken there or some research papers that have done that. So kind of like having this very high level view of everything that we do and then validate that against some specific pieces of information that we can get. How do we verify land ownership? That's a huge bottleneck. If somebody would solve that, I would appreciate that. So currently land ownership has to be verified manually. So there's no very scalable way of doing that. So basically in Estonia, we do have like these registries online registries where you can do that, but there are very many places in the world where you don't have online solutions to that. So this basically comes down to collaborating with local people to help you do that. Is it easy to get companies compensate for their CO2 emissions? Yes and no. There are companies that are looking for solutions like that and are very knowledgeable in that sense. So I think like in the positive on the positive note, the voluntary carbon offset market is predicted to reach the $1 billion size this year for the first time. So it's growing rapidly. It's estimated to be a $50 billion market by 2030. So we're going to have to see if that will grow as fast. So that kind of assumes that there will be buyers for that. But then again, there are very many companies who don't want to do that. And I think even the biggest problem is that those that some of them that do are actually looking for the cheapest and the cheapest carbon offset and like the trying to find the least, how they can find how to buy as little of that as possible. So kind of trying to, navigate through that somehow. And the fact that everybody's looking for cheap offset, it has kind of brought about like this very not quality projects where, for example, it makes sense for forest owners to cut down a forest and then replant a new one there because that sequesters a lot of new carbon, but then that just destroys the biodiversity and ecosystem that was there. So that kind of doesn't make sense. So I think there's a huge jump that we need to still make in terms of getting companies on board on this train as well. And I think it's up for the consumers to also push towards this new reality where companies actually care about what they leave behind.
Nice, thank you very much. We have run a little bit out of time, but we also start a bit later. So we have like 3 minutes, and thank you very much if you're still staying. There is one more question from Whitney. Before I spell your name, now you wrote a question, thank you. Do you have plans to scale outside Estonian market as well? And what is the ultimate goal that you want to reach with Single.Earth?
Yes, we actually started scaling outside Estonia quite rapidly. So that was like the first piece of advice that we received from our first investors, like don't focus on Estonia at all. Unfortunately, that kind of like this was the problem that we went on solving, but to actually create this big paradigm shift, we need to have like this global movement and a global paradigm shift. And by that, we will also solve the problem here in Estonia. So I think like thinking big and outside the box and planet-wide is a part of the success that you're going to make as a company. So not focusing on any specific markets and not going market by market, but having the scalability on top of your head all the time. So kind of like always thinking like, is it scalable? So this is why the digital twin was something that we started building so that we can scale actually across the world with like effortlessly. And what is my ultimate goal with Single.Earth is to basically replace all intensive land use with sustainable land use so that nature is being protected and it becomes a part of economic processes. So instead of having the economy that is incentivizing nature destruction, we would have an economy that starts to protect nature.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you so much for all the insights and your presence here, and not only yours, but also Kaisa's and Annalisa's and all of you that found that time on Monday morning. I know Mondays are difficult, but I think it was a great warm-up, and I hope you're warm up for the whole week, but also for the Climathon. And as you can start being a little bit more active in the chat, I want one last question to answer in the chat. So on a scale from 1 to 10, after today's event, how confident are you to take action and solve this climate problem you described and you discussed with your fellow participants in the breakout rooms? Let's see how this will. Did we inspire some people to actually take action? Feel free to just put a number there. Okay, you went well. 11, nice. From 6 to 9, 8, good. I accept that, great. And it's also nice to understand that if you're not motivated, you're not ready yet to take action in such a way, but you find your own way, it's also quite fine to understand yourself, as we described as well. So those that are 8, we have a second warm-up coming on the 18th of October. So to warm a little bit more up and work on our own solutions and what are your ideas, what are the problems that you see that you would like to solve, and how to brainstorm and come together with people. Because as Merit mentioned, and all the previous speakers as well, that the team is quite important. The people that you start your journey are those that maybe somehow show if your idea will kick off or it will not be met. So stay tuned and let's see you again on the 18th of October. And of course, register for the Climathon, the Ideathon, as we call it, the main event by the end of October. And I would like here to thank again our sponsors, Erco Insurance and Tallinn City Government, that without them and without their support, probably Climathon wouldn't happen this year. So we're very grateful that their companies, there are organizations, public authorities, that their support this kind of initiatives, and they support EIT Climate KIC projects as well, that Cleantech Estonia is running all these programs that all our speakers were talking about today. And join the Climathon journey and let's make Tallinn a better place to live in. Thank you very much for being here.